So, good morning and a very warm welcome to the second of our series of webinars, Growing a Workforce for Tomorrow through Apprenticeships. My name is Nikki Cooper and I'm one of Oxfordshire Apprenticeship Advisors at Oxlep Skills and part of the Social Contract Programme. This morning's webinar will take the form of a panel discussion. So, as we are in webinar mode, cameras and microphones are turned off. We will be doing a Q&A session at the end. So please do pop any questions you have in the chat along the way and we'll do our best to cover them at the end of the session. The webinar is being recorded and we'll send a link through for the recording along with any handouts following the webinar. So to give you a brief introduction this morning, at Oxlep, it's our role to champion Oxfordshire's economic potential, acting as a catalyst and convener to drive a dynamic, sustainable and growing economy. So our social contract programme is a 1.7 million programme funded by the Community Outbreak Management Fund, and that's COMF for short. So these are government funds which have been provided by Oxfordshire County Council for the delivery of our programme. So the programme is really aimed at addressing the impacts of COVID-19 on health and well-being in relation to unemployment, barriers to unemployment, education and training. And the programme focuses on 4 key target groups. As you can see on the right-hand side, those are young people at risk of NEET, and that is not in education, training or employment, our minority ethnic communities, those furthest from the labour market, and the over 50s in need of reskilling and or upskilling. So there are many benefits that we know that come from including apprentices as part of your workforce development. And here at Oxlep, we are passionate about championing the growth of apprenticeships across the county. We're working with businesses of all sizes at the moment across Oxfordshire who are looking to include apprenticeships as part of their workforce development planning. And it's a really productive and effective way to grow talent and develop a motivated and skilled and qualified workforce. Some recent survey results that published on the government website say that actually 90% of apprentices stay at their company after completing the course. 86% of employers said apprenticeships help them to develop skills relevant to their organisation. 78% said that apprenticeships help them improve productivity, and 74% of employers said apprenticeships help them improve the quality of their product or service. So enough about kind of the benefits on the screen and the stats that I've just listed. Today we are really delighted to welcome Ben Payne, who's Apprenticeship Manager from Oxfordshire County Council. We also are delighted to welcome Anthony Tattersall, who's the owner and founder of Darcica. Darcica have recently taken on their first apprentice, which is great, and Ben from Oxfordshire County Council, they both have an established apprenticeship programme running. Unfortunately today, Megan Carter is unable to join us from Blenheim, but we will give you a little case study of the work that we've been doing them towards the end of the panel discussion. So I'd now like to hand over to my colleague and fellow Oxfordshire Apprenticeship Advisor, Leah Bryan, who'll be leading today's discussion with our guest speakers. Thank you. Over to you, Leah.
Thanks, Nikki. Welcome to you both, Ben and Anthony. Thank you for taking the time to come and join us today. Ben, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. We know that you are the Apprenticeship Manager with Oxfordshire County Council, but would you mind giving just a brief overview of what your role entails?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. Yeah, so my name is Ben Payne. I'm the Apprenticeship Manager here at Oxfordshire County Council. A day in the life of, typically, I manage a team of 2 apprenticeship leads, and our aim and our main sort of vision at OCC is to drive a mentality and approach to apprenticeship implementation across the workforce. So we act in a fairly consultative manner, identifying different opportunities that align to apprenticeship standards, and try and embed those throughout the organisation to make sure that we are not only embedding apprenticeship training, but also embedding career development pathways as well. The team and I will then support with the training providers that we work with to manage on-programme progress reporting, make sure that the actual journey of the apprentice is a good one, and also the initial advice and guidance is clear for recruiting managers to make sure that they've got all the support they need from us as well. So we're kind of lucky in that respect that we have that provision available, but we are a large organisation, so it's quite challenging if we didn't have that in place, I would say.
Okay, thank you. And I love the idea behind what you described as the kind of consulting approach that you have. How do you identify the gaps within the council or the departments that would benefit from having an apprentice with them?
Yeah, great. So I think there's a few things really. So we're in quite an alternative situation at Oxfordshire County Council, and the fact that we deliver roles across all sectors and industries. We're not just one organisation. We deliver functions from town planning, quantity surveying, project management, childcare, teaching, or social care, social workers, and so on and so forth. So it's quite an in-depth process to then identify where those skill needs are. So we'll typically work with the leadership and as well as the service area itself and potentially service users to identify the actual statutory resource if required for the output of that team, or we'll be looking at actually how the structure of that team is working in the form of sort of workforce development planning and looking at, specifically at succession planning. So we identify what the requirement is. We then look at what the skill set and the qualifications are, or the requirements for that area. So we want to make sure that we're linking it to professional development, not just at an entry point or not just at a CPD point, but like I said a minute ago, actually looking at how we can develop a really clear and sustainable career development pathway. It's not just about getting people in to do a degree, it's about supporting people from the entry point and having a clear line of vision to get to that degree as well. So we really try and utilise apprenticeships, particularly because they are such a fantastic formal form of training that we can utilise as an employer. And obviously now, since the reform in 2017, there are, I think, just around 600 different apprenticeship standards nationally, varying from level 2 to level 7. So it's a great opportunity to utilise that to actually create clear progression for our candidates.
Brilliant. So what I'm reading from that, Ben, is that not only do you bring new talent in to the council at those entry-level positions, you're also looking to upskill existing members of staff and perhaps take them onto those higher level degrees or levels of apprenticeships.
Absolutely. Obviously, as an employer, we're real advocates for getting new talent into the organisation. We want to make sure that we're not staying stationary when it comes to our workforce. We want to bring new talent in, but we're also really mindful that we actually want to develop and retain talent as well. So we utilise apprenticeships in two ways, really. We try and use it as new entrant opportunities to get new blood into the organisation. Hopefully, as you say, 90% of employers retain their apprentices after, on average. We want to be one of those employers. We want to be supporting that talent that we've developed. But we're also mindful that there are colleagues within the organisation that could benefit from apprenticeship training as well. So, for example, we have an amazing town planning team in our Environment and Place Directorate, and a few of those colleagues have been assistants for quite a long period of time, and that's maybe where they want to be working. We've identified, they're probably working at the level 4, level 3 level at the moment in terms of a typical apprenticeship program, but there's now a level 6 transport planner degree apprenticeship available. So we've now identified a really clear opportunity for CPD to develop them to the next stage within their careers. So again, it's another fantastic opportunity to try and retain that talent in your workforce, but also upskill through formal training.
And isn't it great that you've got that opportunity to help them to retrain and get up to that next level of training for them, and like you say, discuss what their CPD plans are for the future. And then great for you as a business that you're helping to kind of keep your workforce with, retain your workforce. Absolutely.
And I think, specifically talking on the CPD point, there's a lot of employers that probably aren't thinking as creatively as possible. There's fantastic programs out there, which every organisation is starting to get a lot more exposure and a lot more involvement in. So we're talking things like business improvement technician apprenticeships, data analyst, business intelligence, as well as project management, or the sort of bread and butter leadership and management. There's opportunities to develop your workforce as is at the moment through apprenticeship training, obviously making sure we meet those eligibility criteria from the ESFA, but that's what training providers are there to support us with in terms of employers as well. So yeah, there's a plethora of options available at the moment for employers in the apprenticeship.
Brilliant. Thanks for pointing it out. That's really useful to kind of know what options are out there in the world of kind of reskilling. I'm going to introduce Anthony now from Darcica. So Darcica Logistics is a small Bicester-based business who offer storage, fulfillment and delivery services. As Nikki mentioned earlier, Darcica have taken on their first apprentice this year, and Oxlep Skills have been able to support you not only with identifying your apprenticeship standard and the training provider, but also linking you into that apprenticeship grant, which I know has been really useful for your apprentice. Anthony, what were the reasons behind you taking on your first apprentice?
Thanks for having me on.
Welcome.
So the reason we took on our first apprentice was we were a very small, growing business, and I wanted to develop someone from within the team to help upskill and fill a need for the business that we didn't have. I wanted to make sure that it needs to be someone I trusted, because it was our accounts, it was our banking, it was our invoicing. So I needed to upskill someone that was already in the team, and someone that had worked with me for a long time, so I knew I could trust them, and I felt that it was a good way of upskilling them, giving them an improvement in their skills, but also to help take the business forward with the team we already had. So yeah, and I've always developed from within in any business I've been part of. I've always taken people and developed them, and that's why it was important to me. I know how key that can be to a business.
That's brilliant. That's really, really good to hear. I know it's really early days within your apprenticeship journey, but of your experience so far, would you consider taking on another apprentice in the future, or would you consider another opportunity to maybe upskill a member of staff through an apprenticeship route?
Absolutely. I mean, Dominique is nearly through her apprenticeship, her first apprenticeship already. She's been outstanding.
She's flying through it.
Yeah, absolutely. She's done so well. She's actually up for an apprenticeship award this year, hopefully. So we're keen to see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, we're looking at a number of different roles actually for apprenticeships. So our warehouse team are developing, so we're looking for some potential apprentices in the warehouse. We're doing the HGV boot camp. We've got a couple of guys starting to go through that this year, because that's the better option in terms of upskilling HGV drivers. Obviously, it's a key area in the country at the moment. There's a huge shortage of HGV drivers, and if I'm honest, if we don't all put in a little bit and put in some effort to upskill people into those roles, then that shortage is just going to continue. So I think it's the best way to make sure that we've got a great team, and that's build those. And then I've got a guy who joined us about 1.5 years ago through the government Kickstart program. And he's been fantastic. And what we're looking to do with him is to develop him through an apprenticeship and take him forward into roles in accounting and stuff as well. So yeah, really keen to develop as many people as we can, rather than looking out there for more people. Use the people we've got and give them the skills they need to do well with the business.
Brilliant. I love that, and I love the fact that you've moved your person on from the Kickstart potentially into an apprenticeship opportunity as well. And obviously more than happy to help you when you get to that stage of looking at those standards again. Can I bring in my colleague Nikki? So unfortunately, Megan from Blenheim wasn't able to join us. Blenheim Palace, as I'm sure you're all aware, is so important to Oxford and our visitor economy. It's one of Oxfordshire's major tourist attractions, and Blenheim employs many of our local residents. So Nikki, we're just going to talk a little bit about how we've worked with Blenheim over the past year.
Yes, absolutely. So I think the questions really, and what would be really interesting for people listening, is if you were able to give us kind of a bit of an overview of the support that you have given to Blenheim in terms of their kind of workforce development and the discussions you've had about you know, why apprenticeships are important to them in terms of kind of you know, bringing in new talent and upskilling within the business. So a little bit of a summary case study of
yeah. So I've been working really closely with Blenheim. They grow, they're amazing. They grow like Ben. They are growing their apprenticeship program as they grow as a business. They have identified those ways to bring in early talent and entry talent. So really working with young people to bring them into the workforce, and also thinking about those opportunities like Ben described for succession planning and taking people on to the next level. The other thing that I would say about Blenheim is that they're really good at looking at diversifying and being an inclusive employer as well. So they really do open up their doors and opportunities to be an inclusive employer. I know, you know, Megan and Blenheim would say that they really want to be an employer of choice, and they feel that the apprenticeships really gives them the opportunity to do that. Also, through having a very big apprenticeship cohort, I know they're very good at creating that supportive culture as well. Many of their apprentices will mentor each other, as well as the line managers are offering those mentoring opportunities. And I think Megan would probably say that actually, and I'm sure Ben hopefully would echo this, that by bringing in fresh talent, you often bring in new ideas and fresh perspectives, I can't say it, to your business. Ben, would you agree?
Absolutely. I think we're in a very typical mindset sometimes as employers, where we step in and we have the same status quo. We keep doing the same movements, we go through the same motions. Having someone who hasn't had necessarily an organisation ingrained in their values already coming in gives you a completely fresh perspective. Also, we tend to have quite a lot of open cohorts for our learners doing specific programmes. It's another opportunity for apprentices to go work with like-minded people or peers that are studying the same programme in the same sort of industry but in completely different organisations to communicate. And as you know, as an employing organisation, there's such value in then saying, a bit like a parent to a kid when they finish school, what did you learn today? You know, what are we going to do differently in our office this week? What sort of processes can we put in place? And I think that's so valuable, it's so important, and it's something you wouldn't necessarily get if you're just going through the standard process of a normal sort of development opportunity.
Yeah, do you think, so a question for, I guess, Leah, from your work with Blenheim and Ben, with that, the kind of the support and the mentoring that goes on side by side with apprentices, would you say that kind of the organisation's culture has changed slightly because of that and because of the need to kind of support people through the apprenticeship journey?
You want to start with?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I definitely feel that Megan would appreciate what you've said there, and I think the workforce at Blenheim really do appreciate and support each other. There really is a culture of looking out for each other and making sure that everyone has the best of the opportunities that are given to them.
Yeah, and just to echo that, I think what you're saying, Nikki, is since utilising and having a bit more, what we're trying to achieve, or what I'd love to get to, is an apprenticeship first mentality when it comes to recruiting for any vacancy. If we can go, could an apprenticeship post fulfil that position? You know, not all the time is that necessarily going to be a reliable process in terms of, you know, we need that competence now. Sure. However, is there a training opportunity? Could it be an apprenticeship? And that has fostered a really in-depth development sort of mentality to how we manage. We have quite an in-depth induction process anyway, localised with their managers and their teams, as well as a corporate approach. But when it comes to apprenticeships, we're really trying to open up. We're developing an apprenticeship network at the moment, so our apprentices can all get in contact and actually network together, irrespective of what level, CPD, and start championing that apprenticeship approach throughout the organisation. But we've also started to think a little bit differently in relation to who we're hiring as well. You know, we always ring fence care leaver apprenticeship funding so that we can support with care leavers. And it may be poignant to announce that, you know, there's been an announcement recently by the Education Skills Funding Agency for the 1st of August onwards, and well, employers, apprentices, training providers, there's additional funding for care leavers in the UK. It's going to basically bolster from £1,000 up to £3,000, and then on top of that, so there'll be a larger total amount for care leavers. And as a local authority, you know, we have quite an invested approach to supporting care leavers, and so does a lot of our management within the organisation. So I would say as well, don't limit yourself with where you're looking. We almost have an opportunity as employers in Oxfordshire to support our county, and we have such an amazing workforce, or potential workforce, that we need to sort of look into how we can support that next generation of workforce as well. So there's a lot of opportunity and support there, and I'm sure Oxlab, you know, they are fantastic, will support with those opportunities, that advice and guidance for additional funding as well. So it's definitely worth thinking a little bit more outside the box to normal recruitment processes as well, because there's some out there.
Yeah,
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you. That's such an important, valid point. Right, shall we move on? I don't know whether Mel can tell us. I know Mel's monitoring our chat box. Are there any additional questions for us, Mel?
Thanks, Leah. Yes, we have got a couple have come in actually. We've got about 10 minutes. So anybody, any attendees who have any questions, please do drop them in the questions box or the chat, and we'll come to them. But while you're typing, we had one or two. So this one goes back to, I think, when you were talking with Ben about some of the quite niche opportunities. So if a business has a particular apprenticeship that seems quite unusual for a role, how would they go about finding what types of apprenticeships are available?
Great. I mean, if you want me to take this, I think it's really important to know what resources are actually available. So every approved apprenticeship within the UK is specified on the Institute of Apprenticeships and Technical Education website. And it's really important to use that as a catalogue in many respects for approved apprenticeships. So, you know, you may be a boat maker, but there's a boat maker apprenticeship standard available, you know, so it is as niche as it can get in many ways. So I would always say, first port of call, go on there and see what apprenticeships are actually available. It's a great system. It's going to tell you the level, the funding that's obviously covered for government-wise. It's also going to tell you the knowledge, skill and skills behaviours, the mandatory criteria for every programme now nationally, as well as the endpoint assessment. So it's going to give you all the information you need, and it's a great opportunity for you to then match those criteria against the job role that you're sort of put vacancy for out, or, you know, that role that you've got in mind to make or supplement an apprenticeship training for. So I'd say first stop is there. Go there, have a see what's available. You can then type in find apprenticeship training. The first thing that comes up in Google is find apprenticeship training for employers. You can go in there, type the standards name, so you put that in, select the program, and then you can see your providers that are delivering it nationally. Boom, we've got the program, we've got the providers. Let's start looking at getting enrollments ready. So there's loads of opportunities, and one thing I would say, providers vary naturally. However, providers are very keen to support. If you don't necessarily have a talent pipeline that you're aware of at the moment, get in touch with Oxlab. We've got careers leads. We can pump that information straight out to the schools. But the training providers that you're working with will most likely have an idea of candidates or vacancies or talent pipeline as well. So it's a really nice collaborative way of working to hopefully get those positions filled for apprenticeships. But that would be my top tips. Institute, find apprenticeship training.
Can I just point out that Anthony, one of your apprenticeship, well, it was an apprenticeship that I was looking for you, was also quite niche. Yes. So the kind of LGV driving, which obviously I'm not an expert in, but I did the same thing, had a look. I can help any businesses, and Nikki can help any businesses with identifying those standards. But by doing that, Anthony, we actually discovered a training provider that was very local within Banbury, who I think that's who you're doing your skills boot camps through, and hopefully will do further work with.
Yeah, and you know, there are some niche job roles out there, and I think the best thing to do is to seek advice. You know, we asked you and said, look, is there anywhere, this is the role I'm looking to find an apprenticeship for, can you help me try and find something that will fit for our business and how it works? And they had a few different options, which was great, and you know, we've actually gone with one of those options, and we're going to take that forward, and we've got 2 people hopefully going through their HGV this year. Now that may develop into more as we go on further down, but now I know that's an option. It's opened up the door for a few of my guys as they're coming through, and really, how do we develop them and how do we take them forward?
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's great. That's really useful. Thank you both. And this question is probably directed at both of you, probably starting with you, Anthony. Particularly, I know both of you talked about current staff and upskilling using apprenticeships. How do you manage the time that takes for somebody to do their apprenticeship alongside their day job? Have you managed to juggle that kind of commitment with the off-the-job training alongside their work? And how do you manage that? Particularly you, Anthony, probably as an SME, that's quite a lot of resource potentially.
Yeah, it definitely is. So what we do is I make sure that there's a bit of time each day or over a certain couple of days where there's some free time. She does hybrid working, so she works from home, so she knows that she's away from the office, and it just gets her out of the busy day-to-day transport office where, if I'm honest, it doesn't matter what job you're doing, you get pulled, you get picked up for all sorts of things going on. So with a bit of hybrid working and working from home for doing the apprenticeship part of her role, then that helps her to get on with it and not get distracted. So yeah, definitely allowing people to do a bit of hybrid working will take a lot of that away from distractions.
Great, thank you. How about you, Ben?
Yeah, I think for me, it's managing expectations. By nature, an apprentice is someone who's enrolling onto a program to learn. We're not hiring for someone who's competent. And I think for managers, we need to be aware, it's all fine. The hiring manager may be saying, okay, well, I'm going to get this job description ready. We're going to go out. Typically, it's the teams, and Anthony, I'm sure you'll agree, it's the team members and their peers that take a large part of that training aspect into sort of supporting their development. And it's about actually having that conversation with supporting teams, letting everyone know, manage expectations. You know, this person is going to be coming on, they might not have a clue, you know, and that's not a problem because the funding rules stay. They need to develop a significant part of their learning as part of an apprentice. So I think for me, it's managing expectation. Do your induction process the same as you would with anyone else. You know, they're not an alien as an apprentice. They're someone that's employed by the organisation, and we need to make sure they get the support as a team member that they deserve. Also, just tailor that in. There is going to be time where they're going to need to be away from their desk and their duties. Just set the job up. If the job's right and the apprenticeship is right, the off-the-job training and the learning and, you know, the development all comes naturally. But we just need to facilitate and ring-fence time for development more than you would someone that you're hiring for a competent position.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. And we've just got time, I think, for one more question. Obviously, as well as time commitment, there's also a financial commitment from employers to taking on an apprentice. Is there any funding available that might be able to support an employer with their first apprentice?
Shall I take that one?
Yeah, so
you go, Leah.
So as part of Oxlep, we can support you with the funding. Obviously, if you are a levy paying business and you're receiving the apprenticeship levy, so that's businesses that have a payroll of more than £3 million, you would tap into that levy to pay for your apprenticeships. If you're an SME who unfortunately doesn't have that type of payroll, you won't be receiving that. But what Nikki and I can do is that we can work with you to match you with a levy paying business who will be able to pledge and transfer some of their unused funds over to you. Also, to support small businesses, we do have an apprenticeship grant that's available at the moment. So I know, Anthony, you were just describing Dom and how she does part of her job from working from home. I know that the grant helped to fund a desk and chair and a nice setup for her to be able to work comfortably from home. Is that right?
Yeah, it made a massive difference. We were able to use that fund to provide a workspace for her at home that was comfortable and felt like work, but in a home environment, and that was a massive difference.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, any small businesses that are listening in that are just about to employ apprentices, then do get in touch with myself and Nikki, and we can let you know about the apprenticeship grant and what's eligible and how you can apply for that.
There is also incentive payments as well for 16 to 18-year-old apprentices, so don't forget there is also additional funding available for employers as well and apprentices.
Yeah, and the care leavers fund that you just described, yeah.
Increased as of the 1st of August, so it's a really good opportunity to support.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, we've come to the end of our time slot, and that's all the questions. So Nikki and Leah, would you mind just letting people know how they should get in touch if they've watched this and would like to have a chat with you about any of the things that you covered today?
Yep, so next steps here. So this lists all of the things that Nikki and I can support you with. So through from unlocking your apprenticeship levy to that general guidance over what's the right standard for you. We can also support you with your workforce development planning. So if you go on to the next slide, hopefully it gives you the details of how you can get in touch with us. So please do scan onto any of the QR codes that are there. Also, just to point out, if you are a small business that is not engaging with us as yet and haven't completed the business support tool, please do also go along and do that. It takes 7 minutes. We'll ask you some questions, but we can then match you up to further support that the business support team do offer. And our email address is there as well if you would like to drop us an email. I think that's it. So thank you so much to both Ben and Anthony. Thank you for giving up your time. I think all the points that you raised were incredibly valuable and really helpful to both those large businesses and small businesses.
Thank you, Leah, and thank you for closing for me. I had a
Thank you for having us.
Slight technical difficulty there.
Not a problem, Nikki.
Big thank you from me too to everyone that's joined us today.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You.
Thank you. Goodbye.